That's a lot of fiction in one sentence. He is so loud. Next, what do we have? Well, it's that time of year again when the booktosphere is freaking out. Why do I sound like a news anchor? Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. Well, it's a little bit over mid-June by the time I'm filming this, and if you've been around booktube for a little while you probably know that in the month of June there is this kind of mid-year check-in tag that goes around that's called the mid-year freak-out tag. Even though people are not necessarily freaking out about their reading, I think there are more important things to freak out about, but it's a fun tag to kind of pause and assess and look back on what you've been reading so far in the year, and that's what we're gonna do today. My plan today for this video is to start quickly with a few stats, because if you're like me, you do love stats, especially book stats. Then go through the prompts of this tag, and then I also would like to take the opportunity to do a little bit of a check-in on all the different reading challenges that I'm doing this year and how well or not so well I'm doing. And then the final part of this video will be specifically about my 26 for 2026 list, because I think it needs a little bit of a refresh. There will be timestamps so that you can jump between the sections if you want to skip something. And yeah, without further ado, let's look at my book stats. As of today, when I'm filming this is June 18, I have read 41 books so far, which is pretty good. I think I read on average around 70-75 books a year, so I'm a bit ahead of schedule, which is pretty nice. My best reading month so far was the month of May with 11 books, which is statistically a lot for me, but also I read quite a few graphic novels / mangas during that month, so that also helped quite a bit with the numbers. My lowest reading month was April with 4 books, which is much more typical for me. So far, I have read 9 books in French and 32 in English, so about 1/4 in French, which is my native language. I have not read anything yet in Spanish and Swedish, which are other languages that I try to somewhat maintain. My Spanish is pretty rusty. I tried to read a novel in Spanish during my vacation at the beginning of the month, and that was a bit of a harsh wake-up call. I could understand, I think, maybe 50-60%, or maybe more if I was when I was using kind of a dictionary. Or it's kind of tricky because there were parts that felt rather easy to understand and others that were more challenging, and the moment when I stopped understanding, then I was starting to feel lost and it was hard to get back into it. So yeah, I will probably look into graphic novels, which I think are easier. And then Swedish, I used to listen to a bunch of audiobooks in Swedish. I haven't done that in a while, so I would like to correct that for the second half of the year. In terms of format, I read 27 physical books, 9 audiobooks, and 5 ebooks. I am not a big fan of ebooks. I would love to feel better with that format because it's so practical. It's so easy. You just get your e-reader or even your phone and you have hundreds, if not thousands of books with you. So yeah, I would love to love ebooks, but that's really not the case for me. I really struggle and I have to push through. So mainly I will read books that I can't access easily otherwise, or if I want to sample a book that I'm not sure, and obviously ARCs as well, so advanced reader copies I will read as ebooks. So I usually don't read that many, so 5 so far is a little bit above average, I would say. The rest is fairly typical. And then I read 35 fiction books and 6 non-fiction. And I think there's been a clear decline in the amount of nonfiction that I'm reading. I used to read more, like closer to 50-50. And I I think it's easier or it's more popular to talk about fiction books on YouTube. So that could be an influencing factor. But I think the main reason is that I had a few very difficult years and really tiring. I did burn out. I had some personal losses and all of that. And so I think that really impacted my reading, where I wanted something easier to consume and where I would have less to focus. Because like usually when I read nonfiction, I want to retain the information. It's going to be a bit more challenging intellectually. So I think that might explain also that gap. And then the painful statistic, I have so far this year acquired 78 new physical books. It's a lot. I didn't purchase all of them. I received quite a few gifts for my birthday in May, and yeah, I think on other occasions as well. But it's a lot, and it's like already double, well, about double of what I've read so far. So I'm acquiring again more physical books than I'm able to read, and so I would like to balance things a little bit more so that at least my physical collection stays roughly the same size. So yeah, I keep saying, oh, I'm gonna make an effort, I'm gonna curb this habit, and so far this year it's not happening. So I will stop making promises. I think putting pressure on myself is not gonna help. So yeah, I need to find a good balance there. But at least I have unhauled so far 27 books. I am much better than I used to be with letting go of books that I either did not enjoy or that I have no intention of rereading. So that's a way that things kind of balance each other out. But yeah, I could do better. Next, moving on to the prompts of the media freakout tag. I tried as much as possible not to repeat too much the same books. So the first prompt is the best book you've read so far. And there are a few books that I really, really enjoyed. I don't think there is one book that really rocked my world and blew my socks off that I would say like is an absolute new favorite. So for this one, I've picked the best book of the year as one book that I really, really enjoyed, but that I didn't talk about later in the list of the tags. So that book is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is a fantasy novel inspired from the Roman Empire that was very, very popular last year. The second book in the series got published this year. It's here, it's a brick, and I'm still yet to read it. But yeah, this was quite fun. Not a perfect book by any means. There were things that kind of bothered me a little bit about the plot and the storytelling, but overall it was really, really fun. I read this alongside the audiobook, and I read that for my local science fiction book club, fantasy science fiction book club, and we had so much to talk about. I think people also quite enjoyed it. Some people jumped immediately into the second one because they were so invested, which is nice. So yeah, very entertaining, very engaging, and again, I think there's enough happening in there that like you have theories and you want to know what happens and you're trying to understand the mystery and all of that. So yeah, a really, really cool book. I think it deserves a good amount of the hype that it's been getting. Best sequel you've read so far. That one was easy in the sense that I have not read sequels apart, if you count, for a manga series. I am rereading the Cardcaptor Sakura series from Clamp, which is a childhood favorite of mine. And so yeah, I've read I think 4 or 5 of the mangas so far, so that would be the best sequel because that's pretty much the only ones that I read. New release you haven't read yet but want to. I have a bunch of books that I want to get to. Some of them are quite recent. I picked 3 of them that I'm excited about. The first one is Nightshade and Oak by Molly O'Neill. This is a fantasy novel that I want to read for my Reddit Fantasy Bingo challenge. I got this at a birthday present from Kat at the Cat Bite, and then Ellen also kindly sent me a copy for my birthday. So I have now 2 copies of this book, so I have absolutely no excuse not to read it. And this is the story of the goddess of death who, by a wayward spell, is turned human and needs to cope and find a way to return to the land of the dead. Next, we have To Steal a Throne by Gabby Burton. I got a beautiful edition of this book as a present from Melanie at the Dark Corner of the Library. She was unholding it from her shelf and she very kindly sent her copy to me, so I'm very grateful for that. And it's the story of this young woman who basically is kind of pulling the strings at court from the shadows to support her brother who is on the throne. And then another young man comes into the picture who also wants to reign. And as she sees them kind of cockfighting, I guess, for power, she realized that she no longer actually wants to stand in the shadows and she actually wants the throne for herself. And then the third one was a present from Caitlin at Spill the Reads. This is The 10-Year Affair by Erin Summers. This is a literary fiction about a man and a woman who meet, have a strong attraction to each other, but they're both in a long-term relationship. They might have kids as well, so they don't see themselves having an affair. But as time passes, their lives become more entangled, and it's getting really, really hard for them to keep away from each other. And so the book splits between 2 timelines or 2 versions in which in one of them they do have the affair, in the other they don't. So that sounds really intriguing and quite fun to read. The next prompt is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I made a video about my most anticipated releases for 2026, and there are some of them that are still not out. So that includes Theodora's Tea Shop by Christine Jones, A Snake Among Swans by Hannah Kanner, Mothblood by Linde Jung, and Sophie Standing There by Meg Mason. So yeah, I still have quite a lot to look forward for the second half of the year. Biggest disappointment, I think, is very related to kind of expectations going into a book. You're not going to be disappointed by a book that you don't really expect much from. And so for me, I think a big disappointment was The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. It's a fantasy about maps. And if you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I do love maps. I think they're really cool. I'm collecting a few books on the topic as well. And so a fantasy novel about maps, that sounded right up my alley. Unfortunately, I was not convinced by this book. I thought a lot of it was very predictable. It read much younger. I don't think it's classified as YA, but it very much felt very much like written for a younger audience. I was not really convinced by the writing or the dialogues. And yeah, like some elements of the plot, I didn't buy the stakes because they were making such a big deal of like, oh, this person is such an important person in the world of maps, and I'm just like, yeah, well, how big is that and how influential is that? So yeah, that was a disappointment, unfortunately, but it might still be enjoyable for other readers. Biggest surprise, I don't think I've been massively surprised by a book this year, but for this one, I would say Foster by Claire Keegan, because I was quite impressed by how much this author managed to put in such a short book. It's tiny. I think it's under 40 pages, so it's more like a short story or barely a novella, but it's incredibly well written in the sense that, again, she manages to put so much in those few pages and to drive the emotional punch at the end. I thought it was really, really well done, and I didn't expect to again, this level of mastery in such a tiny book. So yeah, Foster by Claire Keegan. Favorite new author, whereas it's a debut or new to you. I don't really have favorite authors in the sense that every time I did, I ended up being disappointed by some of their books. So it's very, yeah, I don't think there is really that many authors that I enjoy the whole catalog. And so I don't really would say I necessarily have auto-buy authors or things like that. But I read from some authors this year that I would be keen to read more from. And so I would say Claire Keegan would be one of them. Katie Kitamura, the author of Intimacies, that I read at the beginning of the year. I think she has a new novel this year called Audition, but I'm more interested in one of her novels that she wrote before, which is called A Separation. And then Vincenzo Latronico, who wrote Perfection, which I really enjoyed as well this year. Newest favorite character. I haven't read that many books I felt with incredibly memorable characters or kind of quite out of the ordinary. There are some people in mind, but it's a non-fiction book, so I don't think that would count. But still, I would say Murderbot from the Martha Wells novel was quite fun to read. He's a robot, calls himself Murderbot, and feels very much neurodivergent coded, even though he's not human. So that was a fun read, and probably quite probably a controversial opinion, but I would say Natalie from Yesteryear. She is not a pleasant person to be around. She is not a good person, but I thought she was such a compelling character, and I had quite a fun time reading her thoughts and being immersed in her head, because she was, yeah, in some aspects she's quite despicable. At the same time, I could still find empathy for her throughout the novel, and yeah, I thought she was quite interesting to read about. A book that made you cry, or the saddest book that you've read. Definitely made me cry. I would say Morris and Marilyn by Sophie Elmhurst. So that's the nonfiction I was mentioning just above. This is the story of this real life couple. They are British and they decided to sell everything they owned to buy a boat and sail across the world and rally New Zealand, which sounds very exciting. But on the way, their boat gets sunk by a whale. And so they end up alone in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and they need to find a way to survive. This was such a tense novel, and I grew really attached to those two people. And yeah, the book went in directions that I didn't anticipate it. I didn't read anything more than the blurb. And so, yeah, there were things I was not expecting, but yeah, I really enjoyed that book. So that could be among my best books of the year so far as well, but I decided to put it here instead. A book that made you happy. Again, probably not super, or probably rather counterintuitive, but I would say Yesteryear by Carol Claire Burke. Not because the book itself is particularly happy. I would definitely not qualify that as a happy book, but more because of the context surrounding that book. That was a gift from Ellen. She ended up with 2 copies and she was kind enough to send me one of her copies. So I really appreciated that from her. And she was also reading it, so it was interesting to hear her perspective on the book. This is also one of Caitlin's from Spill the Read's favorite books. And so even though this was not a buddy read, I kind of shared with her kind of my reactions live as I was reading the book. And it was really fun to have that exchange with her and just like her following kind of my progress through the book and discussing it and all of that. So just the experience of reading the book was really enjoyable and really joyful for me. Favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year? I haven't watched a ton of movies or TV shows. There's probably something, but I honestly don't remember. I need to do a better job at tracking kind of the media that I consume, but I'm mainly watching YouTube these days, so I don't have an answer for that. Favorite video you have done so far this year? I don't know if it's my favorite because it's a bit painful, but the most meaningful video I did this year was the booktube pet tag, because that I'm gonna try not to cry, but I filmed this at the beginning of the year with my dog Alfred, and very sadly he left us a few weeks after that. So this video was an homage to him and as well to my cat that I had many years ago, which was a bit my familiar, like kind of my soul pet. So yeah, this video does mean a lot to me because it's about those two animals that I've shared many years of my life with and that I've loved very much, and sadly that are not with me anymore. But another more joyful video that I'm proud of and that I'm enjoyed making is my April vlog, which is something that I used to do more regularly, of just like filming small clippets of my daily life during the month and then compiling it at the end and just like using that to do a little bit of a monthly review, talking about the books I've read and things like that. And I really enjoyed doing that because it's a nice kind of time capsule for me to look back on, and I fell off doing that for a while, and so it was nice to go back to it. And yeah, I do enjoy the final result, and I do appreciate again being able to look back on what was happening in my life at this specific time and just like seeing the good memories and the fun stuff I've been doing. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received? Bought definitely the French version of the Fallen Gods trilogy by Hannah Kanner. It's a series, like a fantasy series that I really loved from last year, and I decided to splurge and get beautiful editions of it. I couldn't find the whole trilogy in the English version, and so I got the French one, and I think it could be interesting to kind of just like do a little bit of a comparison at some point and just like see how the book has been translated, because I used to be a translator and I'm just fascinated by translation. So this is a fun one that I'm happy to have on my shelves. It's very much a kind of like 3 books, so it's more than one, but let's put them as a package. It's very much a shelf trophy for sure. And then I received also some gorgeous books from Melanie, again, like some special editions that she was unholding from her shelves. I think my favorite, I don't know, because they're really pretty. They're back there. I think I love the Incandescent by Emily Tesh because it has this kind of transparent dust jacket, which is really cool. And The Night Ends with Fire is also gorgeous. And the final prompt is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And honestly, at this point, I would say there is nothing I need to read. I'm just gonna read what I want to read and what I feel like. And even at some point I was like, oh, but yeah, I still have to read my book club reads, like my book club books. But not even, just like, even though I'm the host, I'm not gonna force myself, for example, to finish a book that I'm not enjoying. And I've done that in the past. Like I've DNF'd, like we've been running for just a few months and I've already DNF'd a book I was not enjoying, and 2, just like read the first chapter of a book, was not feeling it, and just like didn't read the book. So I'm not the best host in that sense, and I might not read the books that we've decided to read for the month, but I'm hoping to set an example as well for the rest of the group that if you're not having a fun time, you don't have to read the book. Again, it's supposed to be fun, and so that's why I will not put pressure on myself of saying just like I have to read this, absolutely, like unless there is a specific reason. Like, okay, maybe like if I get a narc, I will definitely try it, but again, if I'm really not having a fun time, I will DNF it. So yeah, I'm well, kind of counterintuitively, considering the title of this tag, I'm not freaking out, and I'm trying to have a more chill approach to my reading, because I've been at some point, yeah, putting some pressure on myself, and it's not fun. I just want to keep my reading fun. So that's it for the tag. Let's look at my reading challenges. As I've mentioned, I'm doing quite a few reading challenges this year. I probably took on too much, but with the excitement of the new year, it was really fun and I couldn't resist. And I think I'm not doing too bad. So some of them are better than others, but overall, I think I'm doing fine. So the first one I'm participating in is the Diversity Book Bingo hosted by Ellen at the Ellen Made Book Club channel. I am doing, because why not? I'm doing the biggest board with 36 prompts and I'm aiming for a blackboard. Although I'm allowing myself to do some repeats on the board, which I didn't do last year because for some reason I didn't thought we were allowed to. So yeah, definitely doing that. So that's my spread in my journal. So I'm doing pretty good. I'm more than halfway through. And yeah, I already covered all the mandatory prompts. So like the diversity prompts with indigenous, minority, religion, LGBTQIA plus, disability, neurodiversity. And then continents, I have a book for North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, and Oceania. Oceania? How do you... My accent is not good, but we don't care. Next, we have the buzzword challenge. I'm doing both the title prompts and the book cover prompts. So one is going better than the other. That's the cover one. No, that's the title one. And I only have 5 books on there. I am really struggling with the before and after keywords, keys. I did find a book that I could read for that. So that's a relief because I was struggling. This or that I have not done. Ordinal number, I'm struggling. Me and my instructional title superlatives. Like I still have a bunch of prompts to cover. So I mean, 5, we're only halfway through. So I'm close to halfway. So actually I'm not doing that bad. But book cover, I am crushing it. I am only missing 3 books for that challenge. So I'm doing very well. Then we have the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge by Chantel Reads All Day. And I think this is the one I am absolutely crushing. Because I have everything except one prompt. So I'm just missing this one, which is a book with a weapon on the cover. And so I mentioned I do have an arc of A Snake Among Swans by Hannah Kanner, which releases the 31st of July, I think. And there is a weapon on that cover. So I will definitely be putting that prompt in soon and finish my first challenge of the year. So I'm excited. On the TBR spin from Freshly Read Books, I was doing well. Basically, you get a prompt each month. So you're supposed to have like a 12 book stack and pick only from that. And obviously, the closer you get to the end of the year, the harder it gets, but then you get some swap. And I was doing that with my 26 for 2026 list. And so I was really not I didn't know what to do with the swaps, and then I haven't touched that list for a few months, so I'm not doing great. I did the first 3. Can you please focus? If I put my face, will it help? Yes. I did the first 3 and then fell off. So that's why I want to refresh my 26 for 2026. And then we have the Reddit Fantasy Bingo. Can you please focus? This one starts on April 1st. So it's been going on for less than 3 months, and there are 25 prompts, and I've already covered 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, 8. So I'm about 1/4 in. I thought I was super ahead, but actually I think I'm just right on track, which is a bit disheartening. But I started really, really well. I think I've been adding less on the board since the end of May, but in the beginning I was just like adding books on the board and I was feeling really good about it. So yeah, we're on track. And then I selected some prompts from the Reader Gauntlet by Baze Reads. So this one is a bit more varied, I would say. So I did finish the Bingeable Books challenge, which is like reading a book in one sitting. I'm doing well with the intimidation triangle. I finished physical GBR. Reading every day for 30 days, I've done that. Reading new to you authors, I've done that. Doing pretty well on the Rainbow Challenge. And then I have other things that I need to do. I mean, Pretty Cover Challenge, I can probably cross some of that. I need to do some spinner wheel, some pull picks, a 24-hour readathon, things like that. So this one is quite fun, but not necessarily tied to specific books. And then finally, we have my 26 for 2026 list. And so I should be close to halfway by this time of year, and I'm afraid that I'm only a quarter in. I was keeping on track at the beginning of the year, reading about two books a month, and then I completely fell off after that. But as I said, I think at the beginning, I'm starting to feel less excited about that selection of books, and so the middle of the year feels like a good time to just like pull out my in French we say joker, but I think you have another term in English, my wild card if you want, and kind of reshuffle things and change some books on that list. So I think that's what I'm gonna do, and yeah, see if I can then finish that list. But I've read 6 books, so I need to create a new list with 20 books. So this is what my 26 for 2026 looks like at the moment, at least the 20 books that I have left. I will start by seeing if there is anything I want to keep on that list, and then from there just pull out from my shelves what I might be more excited to read for the rest of the year. I have now picked out my new list, so let's go through it very quickly. I kept 4 books. Oh my god, everything's sweating. I've kept 4 books from my initial reminder of the list. So briefly, Very Beautiful, which is a kind of dystopian novel that I still really want to prioritize. H is for Hawk. I really want to see the movie adaptation. I think this might be a bit tough to read, and I kind of dropped the excitement, but I think I still want to get to this soon. And then there's 2 fantasy novels I'm keeping for some specific challenge prompts, one about keys and locks and another one about music, which means that I had 16 books to pick from my shelves to refill the remainder of my 26 for 2026 list. The one rule that I've put for myself, oh actually there's 5 books that I wanted to keep. This one from Françoise Sagan as well. I've read a bunch of her books and really enjoyed them, and I haven't read one from her since a very long time, so I think this is the opportunity to go back into it. So going on to the new books, the one rule I gave myself, no, there's a 6th one I kept. Oh my god, sorry. I also kept this book about maps because I want to read more nonfiction, I want to read more French books, and I want to start reading the books I'm collecting about maps. I think that's it for real this time. I kept 6 books from the initial list, so I had 14 new ones to pick. So the one rule I gave myself was that I was only picking up books that I've purchased before the beginning of this year, because I think my goal with this list is to read the books that have been on my shelves for a little while. I'm not necessarily very good at picking the oldest ones, but still I was like, okay, the books I just purchased this year in the past few months, the excitement is still there, like the enthusiasm, they're still fresh and new, and so I think it's easier to gravitate toward those than to go back to books that are a bit older on my shelves. So I only picked books that I've acquired before 2026, so from 2025 and backwards. Kind of not super consciously, I picked quite a few nonfiction and quite a few French books, I think, or at least like language books. Quite purposefully, I put those 2 graphic novels in Spanish, because as I mentioned, I have not read anything in Spanish yet and I want to change that. So I have this book about Georges Sand, who was a French writer, and this book, I think, about philosophers or intellectual women's. I think this is initially a French book that's been translated into Spanish. Next, what do we have? Non-fiction, we have Monsters by... Are you done? This is my new neighbor, Herbert the frog. I think I'm mentioning him in all the videos that I'm filming now because he is so loud. But yeah, back to Monsters by Claire Ditter. This is a book about the art we love but done by bad people. This is a topic I'm super interested in, and I've heard this book referenced in pretty much every video that talks about the topic that did some research, so I definitely want to read it. On Our Best Behavior, this is a feminist book, kind of structured around the 7 deadly sins. I had purchased this for a kind of online book club a while ago, never ended up reading it, but I saw it mentioned by... Let's ignore him. I saw this mentioned on Bonnie Nicole's channel recently, and so that reminded me of this book, just like put it back on my radar. Bonnie apparently quite enjoyed it, so I am curious to give it a go and finally get to it. I think on the feminist vein, I have 2 French non-fiction, one about a woman's relationship to food and how that has been kind of squashed in a way of just like, I think gluttony is the word in English, but it doesn't have that necessarily that negative connotation in French. So yeah, I'm curious to read that. And this one is about women at work and in the capitalist system that we live in. So very curious to read both of those. I also have this French novel about 2 best friends. Something happened, I think, when they were younger and were following their relationship. The blurb is very short. It doesn't give much away, so it's really hard for me to tell you what it's about. I just know that I read a book from this author before and enjoyed it more than I thought, or at least not necessarily enjoyed it, but the book stayed with me and I still think about it sometimes. So I'm curious to read more from her, and this one sounded like something I could be interested in. What do I have? More non-fiction, woke fiction. This is a French non-fiction book. That's a lot of fiction in one sentence. About how kind of woke ideology is changing kind of mass media, such as Netflix and how movies are made, and is it going too far? I'm quite curious to see kind of what's the argument, where this book is going, and to kind of forge my thinking on this topic, because it's something I'm interested in, but that I have honestly not given a lot of thought about. And I think a lot of the very surface level ideas I might have on this are pretty much secondhand thinking, I think, in the sense that, again, I have not put a lot of thoughts into it, and so I'm just like, oh yeah, this person say that sounds good, that's what I believe. So I want to go a little bit more in depth on this, and so that's a good step to take in that direction. I have this book about chronotypes. I started reading it a long time ago and I found it interesting. For some reason I just didn't keep going, so I'm putting it on the priority list again, and hopefully this time I will make my way through it. Then I picked up 10 Incarnations of Rebellion. I've read 2 other books from this author so far, and the first one was fine. The second one I DNF'd, I could not finish, so I'm a bit nervous now, but the concept of this one is so compelling. It's a alternate history about what might have happened if the Brits never left India before the independence. So yeah, I'm very curious about this. I really hope I'm gonna love this one. Maybe the charm, whatever the expression is. So yeah, I maybe kind of lowering my expectations will help. We'll see. And then I picked Ariadne because I think it would be a great fit for the Zodiac prompt on the Ellen Made Book Club Bingo Diversity Bingo Challenge, because it's about Ariadne and the Minotaur, which is a giant bull. And my zodiac sign is Taurus. As simple as that. Another French novel. This is about the boy that was nearly picked to play Harry Potter and didn't end up being picked. The book is number 2, which translated into English is probably not the best title, but this is about this idea of just like nearly making it as the top candidate and not quite getting there. I think that could be quite fun. And then I got, interestingly, 2 books on similar topics. This one is the last one I chose because in the end I was just like, okay, let's pick an easy win to get back into the game because I'm behind. So I picked one that's purposefully very, very tiny and that I could read in one sitting. But those are 2 French nonfiction books about writing and somewhat related to geography. So I guess kind of mental landscapes, creating fictional locations, that kind of thing, or just like the relationship between space, geography, landscape, and writing. That sounds absolutely fascinating. And so kind of not really intentionally, I ended up picking 2 books on that topic. So that's my new 26 for 2026 list, and a big update on my reading so far this year, my reading challenges and all of that good stuff. Let me know in the comments what was your favorite book of the year so far, and as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next one.